Okay.
All right, homies.
All right.
Well, I'm here doing our 4 wands, and we're inside of a tulip poplar.
Yeah.
And here with Garrett Reed, my man.
What's up?
And we're going to talk about this card in particular. It's the 4 of Wands.
Let me hold it up.
You hold it. So, Garrett, tell me, do you have any relationship with the 4 of Wands? Why did I pick this card for you? What do you think?
That's a good question, actually. I'm going to start off and say that no, I don't have a relationship with the 4 of Wands. Not specifically. But I've been thinking a lot about the 4 of Wands, and specifically your card and the tulip poplar. And I actually want to turn it back around on you and ask about the tulip poplar more than the 4 of Wands to start out. So why is the tulip poplar your 4 of Wands?
Okay, so the tulip poplar is the 4 of Wands because it's a tree and it's a 4, right? So from my standpoint, the wands were trees and 4s are home. And for me, tulip poplar grew up in my backyard in Ohio. And that was like the first tree I ever learned. It's one of my mom's favorite trees. It's like home and 4s and wands. It kind of all came together. The Rider-Waite interpretation of completion that's on the card, like a 4 feels like a completion. Like I can live with that. But I want to say that the association of that species with this card is based on kind of that more numerical rather than Rider-Waite idea of 4s being
Right.
About home.
That's interesting because it is marked completion. And I thought a lot, I was thinking this morning about the actual completion aspect of kind of of 4 in general, like on like the spiritual plane of what numbers actually are. Like 4 is not completion to me.
Huh.
Like actually it's like a weird half completion. So the idea being, so if you look at, let's do traditional Rider-Waite, right? So your traditional Rider-Waite of like a wedding or a celebration or a ceremony is really interesting because 4, its type of completion is inherently a completion for another thing. So it's a completion that has something else to go along, right? So let's say a wedding is a completion or a celebration. And yes, it is a completion. It is a celebration. It is totally the beginning of something. Like it is not, there's nothing complete about a wedding other than the celebration itself being done. Like if you think of like 5 as like kind of related to the body, right? Or related to, I suppose, like a pentagram or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I was thinking about like Orion.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about like the headless archetype or trope.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I don't know. It's interesting that completion is associated with it because you associate like stability with the number 4, even though it's like, it makes me think of 3 because like 3 points make a plane. So like it's a completion. It's a slightly more complicated completion or stability than 3, but I don't know. That was something really specific to me that I was noticing when I was like meditating on that number today, that it's just, there's always more to it. It's always like a baseline for some other shit.
Yeah, it's like a
Can
unit.
we cuss on this?
What's that? Yeah, you can. I think you can cuss. I think it's a unit, right? I think it's like a measure. Like in music, like 4s are really like a big part of music as a kind of numerically. So I'm sure there's people who can speak about that more intelligently.
Mm-hmm.
Do any of the cards you brought you got some other 4 of Wands, do any of them have that kind of Rider-Waite fixed meaning attached to them the way that ours does?
So the closest I have to like the Rider-Waite imagery is this Lord of the Rings tarot. I cannot remember who is involved in this deck, but it has, I guess I'll show right here. It has the same like 4 wands supporting like an archway with people, but this one's actually both of the Tolkien inspired decks that I have here have like really sad and depressing imagery. So this is like Gandalf talking to Theoden, trying to convince him to team up against like Saruman and Mordor. So he's actually like, it is a type of completion again, right? So Theoden has been released from his subservience to Wormtongue or whatever. So it's like another completion. Okay, like, yeah, this step is done. And now that this step is done, now that we have this level of stability, let's move on to the next thing. In the Hobbit tarot that I have, and I cannot remember any single person who are involved in these tarot decks. I feel kind of bad about that. But this, the Four of Wands, is Thorin Oakenshield and Balin surveying the desolation of Smaug. So at this point, they've completed kind of the majority of their journey. They're there, they're looking at the Misty Mountain, they're looking at their task. So there is a completion there.
But there's
yet
so
again,
much to do.
But it's like we're just looking at all this stuff that's up ahead, which again, if you go back to the Rider-Waite, if I've heard a lot of people call this like a marriage ceremony.
Yeah.
So I've kind of had that in my head as I was thinking about it. A marriage is, of course, it's a completion of like a courting cycle or like dating, but like what's complete about the beginning of a marriage, you know?
It's a step, yeah. It's a step. That's awesome. You've got other Four of Wands. Can we kind of talk about what you
we can kind of work through some of them. I'm actually going to go kind of more basic right this second. So this is from a traditional playing card set that I have that's just like hand printed, a fun little playing card set. And I was thinking about it, just looking at the Four of Clubs, like clubs and wands, like they go together, right? That's my understanding, at least. Like, that one just goes to show, I think stability keeps coming back to me. Stability, celebration. I don't know. I just like how they're at the four corners. Like, I just can't get over how it's protecting the four corners, which again, if you're talking about four corners, you're talking about like any kind of neo-paganism or anything like that, the calling of the corners and all that stuff.
I mean, that's one of the first rituals you and I ever did.
Yeah,
maybe
actually,
we went.
I forgot about that.
Did pretty big protection on my house after the kids were seeing some weird stuff out in their mental landscape in the psychosphere. Yeah. We had to kind of do some house protection.
Out in the spirit world. Yeah.
I want to contrast the shape of that to this one.
Right. So this is the Marseille Tarot. This one is the Yorav Bindov, I believe, deck. It's also very traditional looking, right? Like it's like a traditional playing card. There's no real imagery there. There's just, these are actually batons instead of wands. I feel like certain people would like me to say that. What was your thoughts when you saw these to contrast them?
That feels to me like gridlock versus stability. And I guess a gridlock is stable, but I also see my tulip tree though, and I also see my 8.
Yeah, flowers. That's something I wanted to come back because that comes through a few of these cards that I have. Floral imagery is coming up, and so you're seeing tulips here as well. So this is I don't know if you actually had a chance to look at this at all. This is from the Spirit Halloween Store tarot deck. I don't know if you can read anything from it, but like buy it next Halloween for sure. Next time October comes along. Very fun, super Halloween costume themed. This is actually, let me see it right there. They have fairies as the Four of Wands, and they have 4 little fairies with some bluebells and, you know, stars and lights. And I don't know what kind of flower that is, but
some kind of lily.
But they're like, how many other cards have floral imagery? Like, is it super consistent throughout the deck? I'm trying to remember right now.
With mine? Or with
Let's go with yours.
In general.
I feel like with yours there'd be at least.
There's a ton of flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of flowers, but their presence is, I want to say, like, unintentional. And I feel like one of the things that Jason Lee said, Uncle Jason said, is the whole history of tarot is accidental meaning. It's one of my favorite quotes he said. So yes, there's flowers, but I haven't examined in our deck specifically, like where they come in and what that means.
It's just something I really noticed today, and so I don't actually have much to say about it other than I noticed, because I sat all these cards down, right? Earlier today, I was like, what in the world am I going to talk about? So I sat all the cards down. I was like, let's figure out, like, what's the consistent, like, what can I pull together from all of these? And then on the other hand, I was like, what if there's zero consistency whatsoever? How am I going to manage this with my deep spiritual knowledge? And that was something I noticed. But there is, like, the themes of, like, stability, celebration, but also setting up for the next step are always there, which I feel like that's going to be in every card in a sense. But if you're talking about stability as a platform, as a foundation, as a base for something, I think that's very unique to the four.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah.
And Four of Wands, like, as someone who, like, works with their hands for a living, I cannot separate wands from tools at all. Like, I cannot separate it from a hammer, from anything. Like, you think of, like, what a wand is, like, it's something specifically someone holds. It's made out of wood. Like, that's very, like, to be used in directing things, or, like, in the Wildwood Tarot by, I think Mark Ryan was involved in the Wildwood Tarot. He uses bows as his wand, or it's kind of separated, like it's not one-to-one with like a Rider Waite, but he uses bows, and so I cannot separate the wands from labor or from tool use or anything like that. So
that's radical.
Stability, labor to develop things, that's like a theme that keeps coming back for me.
I really like that. Can you show that card again? And I'm gonna go get some others. Can you tell us, you cut these cards, and this is blowing my mind at how powerful they are, because I've actually looked at this deck and been like, nah, but now I'm looking at what you've done and it's blowing my wig back.
Sure, yeah, go on ahead and get the deck. So early on in my tarot journey, the Wildwood deck was one of the second deck I got, one of the first decks I got, and I was trying to learn tarot like we all are, and somewhere I heard, it was on some YouTube video, someone suggested that you trim certain decks. So you trim away anything that mentions Four of Wands, or it has like a word, like on Matt's card here, like completion, anything like that that is outside of the actual imagery itself, cut it out. So I trimmed this deck by hand, which took some time. And are you wanting me to just
show some of these, because this is like a deck I've looked at before and been like, cool, but no, but like without the text, it's in the framing, they're just super powerful versus feeling kind of cheesy and yeah, I guess like it feels like the meanings that are printed on them, or even the discussion of the where they are in the minor arcana, takes away some of it. I'm gonna go trim one of my fucking decks.
Yeah, I really enjoyed trimming the deck. In a sense, it kind of shifted it, especially this deck, into more of an oracle deck feeling for me.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you knew, like, this card is their version of death or whatever, and, you know, you can tell
There's
some
you
stuff
can
like
kind
that,
of see,
that you can pull. But, like, just having, like, just trying to figure something out, and you just see this hair show up without context, or with the context of the other cards exclusively in the imagery. It's definitely a different experience laying cards down. So anyway, that was just a fun thing to do that definitely can change decks, especially if you're not feeling the deck. Like, especially like that, I wasn't getting much out of it. If you're not feeling the deck, that's a way to either destroy a deck and know you don't feel it, or change your relationship with it.
That's fresh. What else about the Four of Wands should we talk about, man? We've covered a lot. How do you interpret it when you get it? Do you get this card?
It's hard to interpret it without the surrounding cards. Like, I'm not really sure how to, like, those themes that I've repeated again and again about, like, labor is how I relate to the wands, and tool use, and stability, sometimes celebration, other times, like, you know, it is in relationship to the question and the other cards on the table. So I'm not sure if I can give a better answer.
No, that's good. That's good. Well, I should probably comment briefly on why we're here. So I picked the 4 wands because we started, and I still go back to that accidental meaning and accidental picking up kind of the patterns the world lays down, right? So from our perspective, we're here because I started with wands, right? And I was like, I'm nailing Garrett down on a card, and we're here because this is a tulip tree, and it's like my tulip poplar that I hang out with a lot, and she's radical. We're inside of it, actually. It's a 8-staved big girl.
Yeah, just 8 full-size trees in the one tree. It's very nice.
Yeah. And home and completion, and I felt like, you know, you and I had been here in this place, and we're making home here, so that's just a dope thing, man. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm glad you thought of me for that now that I know your context for it. Very cool.
Yeah.